Our first question, what are you doing personally to change the narrative around race to make your community stronger?
Well, if you go to one of my old websites, singinamerica.com, I was on the Star Spangled 200 Government Commission. I'm a national anthem singer. And I saw where that national anthem was not getting the proper celebration, only a month instead of an entire year. People were trying to remove it, as you know, and emptying amphitheaters. So I went into high gear, drafted Resolution 550, lobbied it myself on both sides of the House, and Democrat, Republican, everything in between, and got it passed with the United States unanimous Senate vote. First woman in American history, as far as we know, to accomplish that without ever being elected. And in the process of it, as you go to the website, you'll see an interview that I did with David Barton, and I dug the history out on a man named Francis Scott Key. Come to find out, he was the coveted go-to lawyer if you were escaping from slavery in those days. And many of his clients, he would walk right into a lynch mob, pull the noose right off their neck and say, lynch me instead. And the night that he was captive on a British ship that was bombarding Fort McHenry, he wrote, "Oh, say can you see, looking at Old Glory." The little girl who sewed those stars, her name was Grace Wisher. She'd escaped from slavery. She was a free citizen, and she had sewed those onto that banner. He later became a good friend. Then he went on to become the Attorney General, was the only Caucasian face in a funeral procession of 72 African Americans for a man who served in Congress 48 years before the Civil War. We should celebrate people like that, and because the history has been removed from many of our mainstay poli-sci classes are gone for our mainstay education systems, people are faltering and all stirred up in hysteria because they don't know. There are heroes of every race. There were even businessmen and people serving in government up north before the Revolutionary War. So I think if the history comes back full force, so will the ability to love each other. Do as Jesus Christ said, do unto others as you have them do unto you. And my late husband, David Manuel, wrote a book with Jr. My late husband was David Manuel, Doubleday editor. They wrote the all-time bestseller in American history called The Light and the Glory. The junior writer on another series, Crimson Cross, and we did our best to keep history straightforward. And I think that's your solution. That's what I'm working hard on, to bring people to peace in this racial uprising. This is ridiculous. We should let old things go and celebrate the heroes of all races.
Calls for immediate change in how law enforcement deals with communities of color. Name one reform you would pass to address that.
Well, first of all, I think we have great police of every race serving us. The majority of the police are excellent. I've got a sheriff who is a nephew. I have got another nephew who has served in White House security and disaster relief and the National Guard right there in Washington. I'm praying for him every day. I'm very good friends with Alveda King, the daughter of the other man that was shot on the day that Martin Luther was assassinated. That was her uncle. And that lady reached into my life when I was going through a health crisis a few years ago, and boy, did she love on me, and I loved her. And we're close friends. And I think with our police, if you get rid of our police force, you got something else bubbling up in the carpet underneath of our feet. And that's all across the border to the south and in other places. It's Al-Qaeda. It's illegal immigration of people of the terrorist Islamic agendas, CARE and others, and I have studied. I'm an expert in national security, trained at the Sedge Academy. You go to my website, friendsoflandon.com or landon.com. On my credentials page, you will see a certificate signed by the chief investigator of 9/11, FBI, John Guandolo, ex-Marine, retired Marine. You'll also see our current analytical consultant still at the Pentagon, Steve Coughlin, who signed the other side of my certificate, our chief analytical consultant of jurisprudence of Sharia law. You're going to see that thing start bubbling up like crazy if you get rid of our police force and a lot of other illegal entities. I think you just deal with the ones that have made a mistake, a bad one, a wrong one, a murderous one that harmed that fellow a few weeks ago, George Flynn, and I think you just deal with them, and you deal with them with them, and you pray for them. So I'm praying Psalm 91 over every one of these police. The ones that are doing a good job, I applaud them. And I think we just need to strengthen our police force with maybe making them go back to continuing education classes on how to handle things like this, and maybe some better interviews and some kind of audit on their behavior on a regular basis, where we reward those who are doing well and those who are sneaking around with their buddies and harming someone of another race unnecessarily. You punish that, you fire them. That's how I think we ought to deal with it, and I think some legislation can be drafted along those lines.
It looks like I lost your picture there.
Okay. I think somebody's calling in trying to mess with the phone. All right, it's Marilyn.
Oh, okay, I got you back.
Okay, thank you.
Coronavirus pandemic still very much at the forefront of everything right now. More than 100,000 several states, including ours, are seeing cases trending up. We want to talk about President Donald Trump's response to that. In late February, he said the number of cases would be close to zero. That hasn't happened. Could he have done more to slow the spread of coronavirus? What are your thoughts?
I think he did an excellent job at curtailing the spread of coronavirus. I think the biological economical warfare that was intended just would have gone around and over top of and underneath of any president that was in office. I don't care if they're Democrat, Republican, or independent. I think he did an excellent job. Who could have foreseen where this was all going to go? See, had the same difficulties perceiving what to do, and then judging it, weighing it, and analyzing it. I'd like to see more done with the story of the man at Harvard University working with the two operatives at BU, Boston University, who are known now to have messed with this thing in computers and mutated this corona. Corona was on the back of your bleach bottle ingredients list of things that it protected against. Corona is nothing new. Corona 19 shows that it was indeed messed with in computers. And I have been in China myself. I have dealt with the communist Chinese. I typed out some of the free church contracts back in 1992, was working with them to try to bring some resolutions on human rights aggressions at that time. And was actually locked up for an entire day, was brought in front of a wall and saw the bloody guts running down of it after I had heard machine gun fire just a little bit earlier, about 30 minutes earlier. So I've dealt with these people. I realize they don't have a lot of concern on that government level for human life. So they evidently were willing to experiment at the cost of their own population and ours. But I think that President Trump has done an excellent job. And you can't paralyze an entire society and expect it to ever come back up. So I think where we're at right now, we're doing well. We need to just go ahead, get out in the sunshine, and let the lift come up off of the restrictions of the COVID-19 and see where we go from there. I think he's done an excellent job, and that's what I would stand with him to do.
And Congress passed the CARES Act, a $2 trillion aid package to bring some financial relief to people and businesses that have been impacted by the pandemic. Would you have voted for it? And would you be open to voting for another aid package next year if we are still in a pandemic?
I would have been open to much of what happened. Some of it I'm still taking a very hard look at. I would like more time to read through all the paperwork, everything that was brought through that process, and that is a very thick bunch of paperwork to look at. As far as what will take place next year, I want to make sure it's not just projected hysteria. I want to make sure there are facts, tested facts, that everything is analyzed correctly and be able to weigh things out in lieu of what would be sitting in front of me at that time. So I wouldn't give you a pat answer right now. I think that would be foolish. I think we're going to have to see how we go through the summer and what are we up against next fall. And I certainly guarantee you that I'm a person who does my homework. I will sit and read till the cows come home and way into the midnight hours. I swear to my own hurt and change not. So if I tell you I'm going to go represent you and do a good job representing you, you can believe I'm going to be sitting there reading through it myself, not some intern looking through it and gleaning it down for me when I come back in the morning. I will sit there no matter how long it takes me to study every single part of it.
And we actually did see some viewer questions as well, so I have one of those for you. The coronavirus disrupting school, what are the drastic changes you're willing to make to address the educational gap and the compounded sum of learning loss?
I didn't hear all of your question. It stopped at compounding, and I couldn't hear the rest.
To address the educational gap and the loss of learning.
To address that, I believe that you could have some summer programs initiated very quickly here for late July, August, and I think there's much better opportunity for people to live in a better health configuration because the heat tends to assist in destroying viral activity. We do know that. There's medical facts for that. I think we should push real hard for summer education right now and try to get parents and students involved. I believe that some of the homeschooler ideas that have been rejected for many years could be looked at more seriously by the mainstream government educating systems and see if there's some value in that. Is there something we can do for these students at home? Are there team leaders, community leaders? We ought to have town forums where people get more involved. Are town mayors and city councils able to help in this type of a situation? Yes, I believe they are. And then inside the classroom, let's go back to the old-fashioned desks like they had in those one-room schoolhouses and just put up a plexiglass shield around them. The children can wear a face mask. I think we can put children back in the classroom, and we're smart enough to figure out how to achieve something like that. But if it starts to be an outbreak again, we're digital savvy enough that we can certainly continue to educate them. Just about every child has got some kind of a computer, a pad, or a laptop, and if they don't, then maybe we can put something together in community centers, set it up ahead of time with social distancing and monitors so that children in that situation can continue to attend school. I believe we can do a whole lot more, and we should be working on it aggressively right now in anticipation of maybe a late start in the fall, maybe the end of September, beginning of October, but we can get it done all across this nation.
And moving on to unemployment, a record number of Americans and Oklahomans filed for unemployment this year. From Washington, how do you get those Oklahomans back to work?
Well, there's several things we can do. First of all, I think on our agricultural tracks out here in the Midwest, we don't necessarily need to be motivated to send our children to participate in the status quo of graduating from college. They're more digital savvy and intelligent in a lot of areas than we were back in the day I graduated in the 70s from high school, because of all that has been a benefit to us in the last 30 years in the digital realm. I think we could put together VOTEC, voucher programs, some tax breaks, and get our farming tracks up to speed on a level of excellence that surpasses China, that surpasses Brazil, and all the other foreign importers. And I believe anybody who owns land in this nation that now is causing us, who could have bought it at $5 an acre, to have to purchase it at $5,000, they're not living here. I don't think they ought to be allowed to hold those kinds of tracts of land. I think we ought to give them notice and put it in a sheriff's auction if you have to, out. And then we eliminate all foreign imports for 5 years. Once we get a system like that up to the status level it needs to be up to, that's fair, because that'll go 1 year past a president's term, and I think we can do a lot to eliminate that. I think we also ought to get our canning factories, our manufacturing factories, our oil industry back up to speed on a higher level. I think that the thermal drilling is possible on tracks that go about 40,000 feet below our shale wells. When you do that, we rotate them. You should have every roughneck back to work and people piling in here. Oklahoma ought to be the oil capital of the world again. You can put it in a Twin City program with Israel, our Middle Eastern ally. They're pretty savvy at it right now. And then I think that you can create some kind of a bartering system to go along with our banking system, where if you work in the local factory or the local farm or the local drilling or the local coal mining or whatever you're doing anywhere in the United States, you ought to have a certificate that you could go to those places and barter and exchange. Right now that would help a lot of people, because if they don't have the cash money and they don't have it in the bank, that kind of a system could go forward very quickly, as it did in the original Plymouth colony.
And this year, Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stittson was believed to be the nation's first anti-red flag law. Would you support a federal red flag law that would allow the temporary removal of guns from people considered a threat to themselves or to others?
I would have to look at that. I'm a Second Amendment rights person. I believe we all ought to be able to carry a gun. I pack a pink pistol. And I think that trained in national security, I'm looking at what would happen if everybody lost a gun, didn't have a gun, the gun was taken away from them. Look out at those cities that have done this type of thing. Are they doing very well right now? No. They are in an uproar and riots that nobody can put down. I think if people are trained and they regularly have to go to a gun range and get a certificate showing that they're trained and they know how to carry the gun and they know how to protect when they shouldn't use it and when they probably should use it, I think if you just increase that system, you're going to have a wiser system of defense here in America, every private citizen being in a good situation. I've been over to Israel, to the Middle East quite often. My paintbrush has taken me there, my voice, my heart. I studied with Shulamit Katz-Nelson, who was the runner-up for the Nobel Peace Prize. And one of the things I can tell you is when some of the shootings started in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, all of the ones that got shot were tourists. Didn't know what to do, just looked around and took a bullet. But the Israelis hit the ground, and those of them that had a weapon shot at the terrorists, and it was over in a few split seconds. If we were that smart here in the United States of America, I think we'd be a whole lot better off. I'm looking at what Governor Stitt passed. I will take a very keen look at it with a microscopic examination, like I promised earlier when you asked me about how I would deal with legislation. And I would promise to give it the most intelligent inspection that I possibly could and listen to all the arguments. But currently where I stand, I believe our Second Amendment rights are very, very important. And my forefather was at the Constitutional Convention. He was a very stout figure in all of that, and he certainly packed a gun, or we wouldn't be here today as free citizens if he hadn't. stout pro-life. Many of my opponents in this nomination process for the primary will tell you that. But hanging in my office is a certificate that was given to me at Harvard at the funeral of Dr. Mildred Jefferson, the first African-American woman to graduate from Harvard Medical School, who founded the pro-life movement. And I also, through her, met Norma McCorvey, who was the victim of the Supreme Court mess that pushed her in as the Roe versus Wade icon. She turned against it all. She became a born-again Christian, and she stood together with Dr. Mildred Jefferson. Dr. Mildred Jefferson was the one who also got the ear of Ronald Reagan and turned him around. And so I'm a very strong pro-life person. I also am somebody who fought the gay marriage battle. I took a whole bunch of media up there to that Boston State House, got in the way of Arlene Isaacson, the gay lesbian who started that battle, stood stout. So there again, the rest of them can talk about being pro-life and anti-LGBTQ rights, and they can talk about border. Now, I'm for the wall, and I don't think Kendra Horn is for that. She voted against President Trump in that impeachment mess, but I am for the wall. However, I believe it's too little too late. We've got a bigger problem. I have testified about this. One of my best friends is one of the leading experts, has a ranch down there she cannot even step foot in. I have been up at 3 o'clock in the middle of the night praying with her neighbor, who was being stuck in her barn by some people who had kidnapped her property coming from the Al-Qaeda drug lords across the border through a state park. They have got a Hezbollah configuration on tunnels in a honeycomb configuration going underneath of those properties. So this is a massive situation that is very bad. And I also have talked to the former district attorney in Tulsa that told me about a cache of illegal weapons, over 2,000 of them coming across the border. So I am going to stand stout in those issues. I believe these are all 3 issues that Kendra Horn cannot stand stout in. She has proven in her voting record that she is going in the opposite direction. And I believe that I will do an excellent job because I'm an informed person, I'm a trained person. I've also got initiatives going in the right direction. And I will be able to study out every issue that she is contending with, and I guarantee you that I will come out ahead.
In the head of Oklahoma's GOP says this is the most important race in the country, as goes the Minnesota's presidency. Is the Republican Party strong headed into November, and will President Trump freely the momentum needed to win this race?
I heard everything except for that last part about President Trump. You faded out and froze on the screen.
Is the Republican Party strong headed into November, and will President Trump bring the momentum needed to win this race?
Yes, we are. I believe we're the strongest we have been in a long time, but we are very strong. We just did an interview with the young Republicans. I'm so proud of them. That new young generation is coming up fast and strong. I love what I see happening with our GOP chairman, David Nally. He's so good. David McClain, he's so great, and I love what I see, and I enjoy being with them. We are going to the Trump rally. I'm glad they moved it off of that anniversary of the racial uprising there in Tulsa, but I'm so tickled about it. We're going in on the executive bus. We're going to be there all day volunteering and serving. I think we have a lot of momentum going, and I'm very proud of him that in spite of this situation happening in the United States of America right now, that he's bold and brave enough to get out there and campaign. We're going to wear our face masks, and we're going to stand right beside him. I think he's brought tremendous momentum, and if you look on my website, you'll see a picture of me with him. His thumb is up because I'm telling him about the Ground Zero Prayer Shield. Wherever there's a Ground Zero Prayer Shield of faith, based on the Word of God, there'll not be another Ground Zero hit. And when I told him we were praying for him and that he would become the President of the United States, standing there in October of 2015, he gave me thumbs up on the whole thing. So I'm standing strong for Mr. Trump.
This week, a lot of people were surprised to see conservative Neil Gorsuch write the majority opinion in the Supreme Court's decision, which is banning employers from firing someone because of their sexual preference or gender identity. Do you see that as a rift in the party, or no?
I don't think it's a good thing, but I don't think anybody should be nailed to employing somebody having anything to do with their sexual orientation, or firing them having anything to do with that, with their sexual orientation. Like I told you, you can go on my website, you can see a film where I stood there as the anchor face that exposed that gay marriage battle and everything that was going on with that, and it happened to be at that Boston State House that we all traveled up there to take it on. So I believe that these issues with the sexual orientation are something that, some of it's medical, but a lot of it is social. A lot of it is now because of what's taking place in our educational systems. And I think that we can resolve these problems in the future, but I think that we should be very, very cautious of legislating what we fire and what we hire.
And we have, it looks like one final question for you today. It is, what do you consider to be the biggest threat facing the United States today?
I think one of the biggest threats is with the overseas entities that are manufacturing and shipping their products over here. We couldn't find a computer cord for our printer the other night. Went to 3 stores. Why? It was sold, made in China. Same thing with a microwave. I think we need to go back all American. George Washington told Alexander Hamilton, his financial advisor, do not re-engage with foreign powers, for after such a bloody expense and war of the revolution, God has put everything we will ever need beneath our feet. He didn't know anything about oil or coal. He was talking about agriculture. But it was a prophetic statement that I believe it served us well. And I'd like to see us go back in that direction, get rid of the Federal Reserve. I think the swamp of the overseas foreign oil situation has wrongfully affected us here. That needs to be cleaned out as well. And one of the things I'm going to go after in my national defense background at the Sedge Academy is to go after this real ID mess on our driver's license cards, which were slated for October 1st, 2020. Praise God, Mr. Trump has pushed that deadline back a year. I found 3 inherent national security errors and talked to former Joint Chiefs of Staff in a conference call last fall. Believe it or not, that didn't start after 9/11. It started with the SDGs UN resolution in one of their big meetings in Brazil. They hired the World Bank, which is also not an American entity, to hire Morph USA, that was bought by Morph Adenia. Muslim Brotherhood are involved in it. It shipped overseas to Safran in France, went to Papillon, the Russian military division of development for biometrics RFID identification. Then it conglomerated to Abathor and then was sold to Alibaba in the United Arab Emirates with its chief partner in China. Does that sound good to you? To monitor everything on a non-encrypted code on your driver's license? No. And what about their gun chip coming in 2022 and the idea of the World Health Organization wanting to put a mandatory vaccine chip in your hand and leave you an RFID tracking chip? No, no, no. So those are some of the national issues I'll deal with. The local issues are giving you jobs, putting people here back to work, seeking to make this the oil capital of the world once again, and going with our agricultural tracts to make them as strong as possible so that perhaps we can be the largest exporters on the face of the globe.
Okay, it looks like that is all the questions we have for you today. Thank you so much for getting on the student call with us and answering those questions for us.
I thank you. And I might tell you this too. Dr. Shelley Landon is my title because I have a PhD in education. I've designed curriculum here in Oklahoma, teaching at Oral Roberts as a Master Artist at Large. So that's another area where we can assist our students.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Shelley, for joining us.
Thank you. It's been a joy. God bless you.
Have a good day.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.